Hello everyone, I'm here to do civil procedure. This is my first video on civil procedure. There'll be several videos on civil procedure. I'm going to talk about the preliminary issues first. Preliminary issues first. So to hear a case, the court must have jurisdiction over the case. The person must have jurisdiction over the persons involved, the subject matter of the suit. The case must be held in the proper venue, and the defendant must have notice of the suit. And the proper law must be used to resolve the issues. So that goes into area and all of that. Okay, so these are preliminary issues. Preliminary issues continued. We're going to be talking about PJ, which is personam jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, SMJ, venue, notice, and choice of law in diversity actions. Okay, this video is going to be on PJ. Getting my spotlight here. Okay, so the rule for personam jurisdiction or personal jurisdiction means the court must have proper jurisdiction over the parties to the action. PJ will be proper where there is a sufficiently close relationship between the forum state and the defendant. There are three traditional bases that you may need to use where the defendant, I'll do that after, the three traditional bases that may provide PJ. And modernly, PJ can be found sometimes using the state Longarm Statute if they give one, okay? Sometimes they give one, sometimes they don't. So the traditional basis for PJ exists where the defendant consents, that's spelled wrong, sorry, consents to jurisdiction in the forum state, domiciled in the forum state, present in the forum state when served. So the way I memorize these are C for consent, domiciled, or present in the forum state. Those are the three. And then we'll go to modernly. Modernly, of course, is the Longarm Statutes. Rule, a Longarm Statute is the mechanism that gives the state the power to reach beyond its borders and assert jurisdiction over a non-resident. There are two types. The California Longarm Statute, and then we have the specific Longarm Statute. So California gives its state courts power over any person or property up to the limits of the Constitution. Okay, so up to the limits of the Constitution. Okay, so California, as we did. Now there's a specific Longarm Statute. Some states gives its courts power over non-residents only under certain specified situations. So sometimes you'll see in an MBE, you'll actually see the Longarm Statute towards that state, okay? An example, the commission of a T while in the state. So let's give you that example. Okay, so specific Longarm Statute, and then we also have California's Longarm Statute. So if they're going to commit a tort while in the state, where a specific Longarm Statute applies, the exercise of jurisdiction must satisfy the statute and also meet the constitutional requirements of the minimum contact standard, okay? And so T is for tort here, if they're going to do a tort. The nature of defendant's contacts. Nature of defendant's contacts. A defendant must have sufficient minimum contact with the forum of the state such that asserting jurisdiction over him does not offend traditional notions of fair play and substantial justice. There's a lot in there. I see these all the time on MBEs and essays, so you really do have to know this. We have our first element, minimum contacts, and many ways to get to this here. We'll talk about that in a second. And then does not offend traditional notions of fair play and substantial justice is our second element there, which are the fairness factors, which I'll give these to you in a few minutes. Fairness factors, okay? So let's talk about minimum contacts first. Minimum contacts. Defendant has purposely availed himself of the benefits and protections of that state, whatever state he's at that time of the injury or time of the tort or the time of the real property being sold, all of that. It is reasonably foreseeable that his activities in the forum state subject him to being hailed into the court there. So you kind of have to prove here, why would the court allow this state to hail him into this court? So you got to prove he has at least minimum contacts there. There's plenty of MBEs on this. Minimum contacts meaning, what is he doing in the state? Does he do it all the time? I've heard of ones where they're putting, there's a actually companies that work through the internet and they put on billboards. They sell their internet stuff through billboards or online, and so that sometimes isn't efficient enough to bring them into for any kind of injury that's caused or whatever for the state. So it just depends on the facts there. Okay, so, and it has to be reasonably foreseeable that his activities in the forum state will subject him to be hailed into that court, though. So these are where your arguments come in for minimum contacts. Lots of MBEs on these. And we have relatedness. A relatedness of a claim to contact with forum. The court will also consider the relatedness between the claim at issue and the defendant's contacts in the forum state. The closer the relationship, the more likely the court will find it fair to assert personal jurisdiction. So the related of claim at issue and the defendant's contacts in the forum state. So relatedness, you're going to have to also do your little argument there too, using the facts. So if there's a claim arising from activity in the state, provides specific jurisdiction, the relatedness between the defendant's contact and the plaintiff's claim. When the claim is directly related to the defendant's conduct with the forum state will have specific jurisdiction over the defendant for that claim only. Okay, that's specific. Essentially at home in the state provides general jurisdiction. So if they're essentially at home on the state, it's general jurisdiction, where the contact with the forum state are sufficiently systematic and continuous that it renders the defendant essentially at home with the foreign state. So I should have put these on here. So we should have put these on here. There's general jurisdiction, and then there's specific. Okay. General is basically at home with the forum state. And then specific jurisdiction is, it's when the claim is directly related to the defendant's contact with the forum state will have specific jurisdiction for that claim only. So for that claim only. Okay, so you do have to write on those too. So let's go to the fairness factors. Fairness factors, the exercise of jurisdiction must be fair. Convenience, well, we're going to balance these with convenience to the parties. Burden on the defendant to travel to the forum state. Forum state's interest in regulating activity within its borders and protecting its citizens, and any other interest. So this is where we balance all of these. We use the facts and we balance the fairness factors. Is it fair to bring that defendant into the court? Okay. Lots of MBEs on all of this stuff. The more you do, the more you just see how they all come into play. So basically, PJ, we're going to give the rule. PJ is when the court must have proper jurisdiction over the parties to the action. These kind of have to be memorized. So PJ would be proper where there is a sufficiently close relationship between the forum state and the defendant. You argue that. Remember the three traditional bases. We have consent, domiciled, or presence. And also modernly, we're going to use the Longarm Statute. Okay, so we argue our facts here with the Longarm Statute. Then we go to the nature of D's conduct, minimum contacts, and does not offend traditional notions of fair play, which are the fairness factors. Go to minimum contacts. We have to prove that that individual should be hailed into the court based on whatever the facts are. Relatedness, remember we have the specific and general. Specific jurisdiction and the general jurisdiction here. General means essentially at home in the state. Specific jurisdiction is when that claim is directly related to the defendant's contact with the forum of the forum state. Okay, and it's for that claim only. And then we go into the fairness factor. We argue all of these: convenience of the parties, burden on the defendant to travel. I've seen this in MBEs, forum state's interest in regulating that activity and its borders and protecting its citizens, and any other interest that might be come up with the facts. Okay, so that's that. Civil procedure, we have the approach. Actually, I'll do the approach in a second. I was going to go ahead and give you guys my, I'm going to do my approach too. Let's stop sharing here. And I have my civil procedure approach that I usually write up for you guys really quickly. Let's see if I can get this done here. Civil procedure. Okay, so I'm going to write it up here for you guys, my quick approach for personam jurisdiction, or PJ. So of course you're going to start with the rule. So hard to write on my computer with these. I'm going to go to our rule. Everyone has different rules, so I really don't write them up here. Everyone has a different rule. And then we're going to go to our traditional bases. And remember, traditional bases are consent, domiciled, and presence. Okay? If yes to these, any of these, then we are done. Of course, we're not going to get something that deals with this, but if yes to any of these, you are done with your analysis. Okay? Now, if no, then we're going to have to argue the Longarm Statute. Give your rule. If they apply, if they actually have one for the state, you got to write that in there. And then there's two sections to our Longarm Statute. We're going to have our, of course, our minimum contacts. And we're going to have our fairness factors. Okay? Now, minimum contacts, you kind of have to argue here. And you're also going to have general jurisdiction. General jurisdiction, and then some minimum contacts, and you're going to have your general jurisdiction here too, remember? And your specific jurisdiction here. Okay? Now, general is usually continuous and systematic. And specific is it's not continuous and systematic. It's really a long arm specific. Okay, so that's how these two are right here. Then we go to our fairness factors. You're going to have to write up your fairness factors. I think some of them were fairness factors, convenience of the party, convenience of the defendant, burden on the defendant to travel, all of that. So that's when we argue these fairness factors. So basically we go from our PJ to our rule. Traditional basis, if we run through that quickly because they usually don't involve that. If it is yes, then you're done. If it's no, we go to the Longarm Statute. Give your rule. There's two pieces to it. There's the minimum contacts. There's the fairness factors. And remember, general jurisdiction and specific jurisdiction. And then argue your fairness factors and give your conclusion. So that's pretty much the write-up on that one. I'm sure that's it for. Yep, and there's so many different ways to do the fairness factors. I would just stick with the ones that I put on here. Those are the most important. There's a zillion of them, I know. There's like the Burger King test and all of that stuff. But I just put the ones that I've seen mostly on MBs and essays for the fairness factors. And those are the ones that I have on my actual little, let me share that again with you guys. These are the actual fairness factors that I see a lot of them arguments on, okay? So the civil procedure approach for every video is going to be PPT, PPD, TPAF. You have to give a mnemonic for that. I have my own, but probably wouldn't understand it, so make up one on your own. P is for preliminary issues, pretrial procedures, disposition of case without a trial, trial, post-trial issues, appeal, and use of final judgment. Now, preliminary issues, that is just the main, just the main kind of category, but there's a ton to it. So you can't just say preliminary issues. You have to remember everything that goes with the preliminary issues. And for me, preliminary issues are going to be my PJ, my SMJ, supplemental jurisdiction, removal and remand, venue, notice, choice of law. So you automatically have to just know the little minor issues, the bigger issues, but I mean within the bigger issue. Okay, so that's how I memorize these. So once I get them all down, then I write them down. I write a checklist every day to make sure I know them all. So those are my preliminary issues. That's just my very first one, which is PJ. Next, I'll do SMJ. And that's it for this one. So I hope you guys do practicing your MBs and essays and do good on the bar exam. And I'll see you guys in my next video.